Hello, once Forest focus. Nottingham Forest look to erase the disappointment of the Fulham game when they go to Chelsea on Sunday. Join me to discuss what looks a daunting task for the Reds, giving us the opposition point of view. After Cole Palmer's 4 goals against Brighton, is Chelsea fan Harry Daniels. Harry, you were with us last season discussing Chelsea. It's good to have you back. How are you doing today?
Yeah, good, thank you. It feels like it's always a roller coaster supporting both our clubs at the moment. So we'll talk through it. We'll talk through it.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Looking forward to it. We'll discuss a bit of Harry's work as FPL Harry as well. Give him a chance to plug himself at the end. But we're here to discuss Chelsea primarily, obviously. Really interesting team to follow, as you say.
Mm.
What have you made of them thus far, and what are you hoping for over 38 games?
I think most Chelsea fans are pleasantly surprised with how things have started, particularly after the first game of the season against City, where we lost 2-0 and looked like just nowhere near the level we wanted or thought we could get to. And we thought, well, maybe it will take time. And I think they've shown over the last, 5 games since then that there is a level in that team that can be very good. I'm not getting carried away because we've seen short bursts of form from this team over the past couple of seasons that hasn't materialized into anything long term. But I think, we're the top scorers in the league so far this season, scoring even more than City. So if that's not something to be positive about, then I don't know what is.
When we look back at the start of the season, there was Forest had bomb squads over the years. Chelsea
Yeah.
certainly have. It felt like they were doing some really interesting business. Chilwell in exile, poor old Conor Gallagher shipped out when he didn't necessarily want to go.
Mm.
I think I saw a tweet from you at the time. I think you were quite critical of how they were handling players. What have you
Yes.
made of it? Is it a madhouse or is that a bit of a misconception?
Um, so I would still stand by the fact that I don't like how they handled the certain situations and the departure of certain players, particularly Gallagher and then Trevor Chalobah as well, who's only gone out. He's gone to Palace, so he's still in the league. But yeah, I don't love the way it was handled. I understand from a long-term point of view that someone like Gallagher might not be the caliber of player that will get Chelsea to the heights that we want to get to. And from a purely footballing point of view, that Gallagher is maybe not the best player for the squad, given he wants lots of first team minutes, but we don't want to give that to him. However, there is a really big emotional part of transfers like that Conor Gallagher is a Chelsea boy through and through. He was massively there for us at times last year where a lot of the players who we needed to be just weren't. And he stepped up, he took the captaincy armband, and then for him to sort of be frozen out so quickly wasn't just not something I like to see. Again, like from a financial fair play, from a footballing ability point of view, I can understand it, but from an emotional point of view, I hate to see things like that.
And what have you made of the job Maresca's done then? Because he's had all that to contend with. There was some controversy around Enzo Fernandez,
Yeah,
with relations in the squad after the video he posted
hmm
with some chants around the French national team players.
yeah.
He's had a lot to deal with. Has he done a good job, or are they in a slightly false position based on performance, would you say, or not?
I think he's done a good job at it. I think it's hard to see where this squad as a group of players are, right? I do think we have, and we saw it at times last year. There is a group of players in this Chelsea team who, from a fan point of view, are very likable and get on very well and enjoy playing attacking football together. So I think he's dealt with the squad well. You see the quotes at the start of the season where he says, "Yeah, we've got loads of players, but I'm only dealing with a 21-man squad, 25-man squad, so it's not nearly as bad as it looks to the outside." And I do think there is a reasonable amount of truth in that. Now, to the players who are not in that 21, 25-man squad, I can understand that it's pretty difficult for them. And, it's not great. They're just going to basically be training and maybe get a few cup games here or there. But it does mean that he has the ability to create a very focused squad for the Premier League and then for the Conference League as well to try and get results and try and build that team around that. I think the first game of the season against City, at the time, I thought it was quite a good time to play City because they were missing a few players. But I think looking at it now, if we were playing that City team, playing like we are now and maybe like they are now without Rodri, it would have been better. He looked out of his depth in that first game. He looked like he didn't want to get absolutely massacred in the first game of the season, which as a new manager, I can kind of get. But I'd like to see that if we played a better team now, like we've got Liverpool in a few weeks, if we play football like we've done in the past few games against Liverpool, then that would be a real boost to us and the fans that he's got that in him. But if we revert back to maybe being a little bit more defensive, trying to be a little bit more cautious like we did against Man City, then that would be a step back, I think.
What's the fan view of the ownership, out of curiosity? Our owners are very popular at the moment. Is it, from what you would say, is it 50-50, or are they really turned on the ownership?
Um, I would say there's not loads of positivity around the ownership. There's not as much vocal negativity as there is when you're losing. It's one of those, right? That when we win games, we suddenly look like, oh, okay, like, and then things turn very positive. There is apparently fallouts going on at the moment between the two owners, between Todd Bowley and then the other name has slipped off the tip of my tongue, where they might sell and go with one full ownership. Now, Todd Bowley is the figurehead, right? That everyone on Twitter, everyone in the media throws blame at, but he's only got 15% ownership in the club, so his involvement is actually much less. He's just that sort of figurehead. I mean, there's been a lot of scattergun approach, and I think the ownership has had a lot of hate thrown at him, particularly thrown at them because of the transfers that we've been making over the past few years. That it doesn't just seem sensible. Like most clubs make a transfer for a player like I don't know, like a Jadon Sancho or something like that, to use him an example, and there would be so much more excitement than there is when Chelsea sign that player, because we just think it's another name on the list and it will probably go wrong like the rest of them do, and we're forcing out maybe a homegrown talent in order to fund this player that we've got. So I would say at the moment it's not quite as negative because we're winning games, but as soon as we stop winning games, things will. It's very, very volatile at the moment.
I can imagine the reaction if you lose this one to us, but we'll come on to that.
Yeah.
I'll ask you for your predicted lineup later, but you have to ask you about one player in particular because of Cole Palmer after his 4 goals at the weekend.
Yeah.
And I think he had 4 assists against Wolves as well. So he's obviously
Yeah.
just an elite talent. I put in the questions I
Yes.
sent to you, is it Cole Palmer FC, or is that massively oversimplifying it?
I think a lot of teams rely on a certain player more than other players, right? Every team will have a talisman that you look at that if you take them out of the team is not going to perform nearly as well. I would argue that it's not Cole Palmer FC. I would argue that we would not be nearly as good as we are if we didn't have him. But I do look at some of the other players, like Madueke's looked so good this season. Like Sancho has come in and fit the squad really well. Like Jackson continues to just perform as well as we'd ever want him to with what we paid for him and the sort of situation he's been put in. So I don't think so. He's the hub of that attack and he links it all together. But I do think that with Sancho in there, with Madueke in there, with Jackson in there, that sort of unit together is really what's pushing us on. Of
I
course,
know.
he's like fantastic, right? And he would walk into pretty much any team in the league, if not in the world, in the form that he's playing on, and he looks unstoppable. But there is other players in that squad doing well.
Um, Obviously, you see the headline of the Brighton score, you see the 4 goals. You think, oh my God, we're in for a real tough afternoon. And I'm sure we are, obviously. But we played Brighton the week before and exploited some pretty considerable weaknesses around
Yep.
mobility at the back and a high line.
Yeah.
Did Brighton make some kind of catastrophic error and completely shoot themselves in the foot in the game against you guys?
Yeah, it was a very similar story. So my fiance is a Forest fan, so I watch a lot of your games, and I watched that Brighton Forest game, and I then watched this one as well, and it was very similar. They were not good defensively, a couple of errors, but also this high line with Lewis Dunk as being their main centre back just is a very strange thing that they are doing at the moment. I think we put the ball in the back of the net 7 times in this game. 3 were ruled out for offside because of that high line. But yeah, they massively shot themselves in the foot here. What I would say though is so did we. Like defensively, we conceded twice, and it could have been more as well. This game at the weekend between the two of us is not going to end 0-0. I'm pretty sure of that, right? We are great going forward, but there are still a lot of frailties defensively, which have been exploited at times this season.
Yeah, I watched some of the Wolves game as well. I know that ended 6-2, but that was a bit of a basketball game.
Mm.
What is it about the Chelsea team then that makes them so defensively vulnerable that you think Forest could get at potentially?
Well, I mean, I still feel like the centre backs still at the moment are still finding their feet. I think Fofana and Colwell will be a strong defensive partnership, but they're still finding their feet, still finding time to link with the defensive midfielders in Enzo and Caicedo at the moment. There are just an awful lot of players at the start of the season who have just not played many minutes full stop, and particularly played many minutes together, right? Enzo and Caicedo played a decent amount of minutes together, but there were injuries to both of them last year. Fofana was out for pretty much the whole season last year. Colwell has come back in, but he played a lot of minutes at left back and then was on the bench for the second half of the season. Cucurella has been good, but we know that he still has frailties at times. And then at right back, we have played, I think, 3 different players at right back in the opening 6 games, right? We've had Reece James, who's now still injured. We've had Gusto, who then picked up an injury. We've had like Tosin Adebayo playing there. We've had Disasi playing there. So we haven't found a structure defensively that is working consistently over those games. And the other thing is Sanchez has been really good from a shot stopping point of view, but ball playing is never Sanchez's like strong point. Is never going to be what he's known for. So with a lot of centre backs who are new to the system, not playing together, with a goalkeeper who doesn't love having the ball at his feet, there are mistakes defensively, and we have seen that this season.
What on earth was going on with the Chelsea goalkeeper situation over the summer? Out of curiosity, every time I checked like Twitter or transfer gossip, you weren't just linked with a keeper; you just signed a keeper. So what's going on there?
Yeah, so it was a bit strange because, of course, at the end of last season, it was Petrovic, and then we had Kepa come back from Real Madrid. Sanchez was frozen out or just not favoured at all by Pochettino. Then we were linked with several goalkeepers, Ortega at Manchester City. Then we signed Jorgensen as well, and we all thought, well, Jorgensen's going to come in and be the number one. That's why we've signed him. And now he can't even get a game because Sanchez has been the one so far this season. And Kepa went out on loan, and Petrovic, who was good for us last year and was our number one, is now can't even get in the squad for anything. So goalkeeper situation is still a little bit bizarre. Like Sanchez has absolutely done nothing wrong, and he's been good enough for us this season. I still think if we want to go to the next level, they're probably not good enough. But I'm not sure Jorgensen ever was the keeper to do that anyway. So it does feel like a slightly strange signing if he's not going to play him. I don't understand the need for him as a signing if he's not going to come in and be our number one. I mean, we love to sign players, right? You love to sign players, and it was just one of those that there was a keeper available for not too much money that we went and bought. And maybe if Sanchez messes up, he'll be in there. So he obviously doesn't rate Petrovic enough because he didn't want him as a backup. So we went and added someone else. It was a bit bizarre, as a lot of the signings we've made are. And some of them work and some of them don't, right?
Oh yeah, I've seen that before. Don't worry, Forest, definitely. Before we get onto your predicted 11, I just wanted to ask you about the attack and the kind of the structure of the attack under Maresca. What kind of football is it? I watched Leicester; it's massively intricate and involved. Is it very much like that at Stamford Bridge?
Yeah, so that front four are linking really well together. Sancho is filling a void on that left wing that we've had a little bit over the past few seasons. We've tried a few different players out there. It was then Neto at the start of the season, and Neto's fitting fine, but he's not really a left winger. So Sancho's actually come in and been that final sort of cog that I feel like we've needed. He links really well. I know Palmer gets a lot of plaudits, but Nicholas Jackson just doesn't get the plaudits that he deserves for linking this attack together. He is so involved in drifting wide, coming central, offering space, running in behind. He does so much work for the team, and he doesn't score as many goals. He scores a decent amount of goals, though, that goes a little bit under the radar. That I just think he is the cog that actually makes a lot of this attack work and allows the likes of Palmer to get in the positions he does to score goals and to do what he does best, is having a workhorse like Jackson up front that can do what he does. Madueke as well is so direct. It's nice to have a winger like that in our team. We've spent a lot of time with wingers over the past few years that are great at sort of running in behind maybe, or sort of creating passes, crossing the ball. But we haven't had a winger like Madueke get a consistent run of minutes that is so direct. And in games where you are up against teams that want to defend, having players like that in your starting 11 are so vital. Every time he gets the ball on that right wing, he wants to go and take on the fullback, and he's very, very good at it. So we actually now have a front four where all four do something different. We've been looking at lineups where we're very good at certain systems in the past and we've scored a lot of goals, but then we come up against teams who want to play a low block and we haven't really had a route through that. But now I feel like there's a front four where everyone offers something a little bit different and it's helping us beat teams no matter what they're putting up against us.
That's interesting because I think we'll come on some more about Forest, but I'm sure we're gonna sit deep and present a different challenge to you. Just before I ask Harry for his predicted lineup, just a quick word for the Trent navigation. Wednesday nights, Champions League nights, you can get a Peroni and a pizza for 12 quid. And I've spoke about pizzas at length and vouched for them. You don't get pizza and a Peroni for 12 quid in London, I bet, do you?
Especially not at Stamford Bridge. You'll be paying double that. If anyone's coming on the if anyone's coming on the away day, you might need more than 12 hands if you plan on getting something to eat.
Yes, massively. Regular viewers will know that people, if there's ever a pizza advert, the guest gets asked for their favourite pizza. So I'm putting you right on the spot, Harry. Favourite pizza?
I mean, if I'm in a restaurant, I'll just order a pepperoni. But sort of, if I order a Domino's or something like that, it'll be whatever meat toppings I can get on it. Right, salami, sausage, beef, that sort of stuff. I'm a meat feast type of guy.
Very good. Yeah, they've got one of those at the Nav. So yeah, get on board with that if you can. And thanks for their support as ever. Do us a favour and give us your predicted Chelsea lineup if you would, Harry.
Yeah, I actually think we'll probably be unchanged. Of course, we play in Europe on Thursday night, so they will keep one eye on that because if someone like a Jadon Sancho starts that or a Madueke starts that, then maybe we see Neto come in for one of those two. But I think generally it will be unchanged. So Sanchez in goal. I don't think Reece James is still out, so it will be Malagusto in at right back, Fofana and Colwill as our centre backs with Cucurella left back. Enzo, Fernandez, Caicedo, midfield two with that front four. So Madueke, Sancho, Palmer, and Jackson most likely to be. I expect it to be unchanged.
You've spoken about the front four, so I'll ask you about and Sanchez. I'll ask you about a couple of other players. You spent so much money on those midfielders. Very good
Yes.
players. Have they lived up to the billing yet or not?
It's difficult. I don't think they've lived up to the value that we've paid for them, but I don't think that many transfers at that price have ever lived up to the money that people have paid for them. Like I think people have the perception, and I do as well. If you're paying 100 million for a player, they should be almost a Messi, a Ronaldo, and Mbappe. Even a Cole Palmer or something like that. They need to be hitting those heights. So to judge them on the 100 million budget, no, they haven't featured to that level, right? Caicedo is becoming better and better as time is going on. I think he is starting to really show what he did at Brighton. His ball winning is becoming better and better. His passing ability is not quite as good as we'd maybe have hoped for, so there's still room to grow there. Enzo Fernandez, I think the jury is still out on him. He's been fine at times, but I think we've struggled to find a role for him. We've played him in a 6, we played him in an 8, we tried him at a 10 in the start of the season, and that definitely didn't work. I would say I'm more pleased with Caicedo than I've been with Enzo so far. I think there's still room for Enzo to grow, and we've got players like Lavia knocking on the door, and I think if one of them was to change, it would be Enzo. I think Caicedo will be in that team for the foreseeable and for the long run. So probably not worth the money that we've paid for them, but loads of players at that price are not worth the money. Caicedo is definitely getting there. I think Enzo still has a little bit more way to go.
Yeah, Lavia is an interesting one. I saw him play against City and thought he looked really good, actually.
Really good. Yeah.
Good players, been injured. You spoke about the
Yeah.
fullbacks a little bit. I think Gusto's really good. Does he invert under Maresca and leave space, or does he just play as a traditional right back?
So it's normally Cucurella that ends up inverting from the left-hand side. There is a little bit on both sides, so sort of kind of depends a little bit on the opponent we have. There is inversion from one of the fullbacks, depending on who we're up against. Gusto has been a little bit of an unsung hero for us because we've had Reece James, one of arguably when he's fit, a great fullback, right? But it hasn't been fit for what feels like years now. That we are very, very lucky that we signed such a good deputy who's ended up playing an awful lot of minutes for us and an awful lot of games. And it just was never expected to be the case. And he's been fantastic for us. And then Cucurella as well, like one player that has had an awful lot of difficult times in a Chelsea shirt at the end of last season really stepped up. Sadly, as an England fan, we saw him be very good in the Euros as well with Spain, and he's continued that into the start of this season. He loves to complain, and I wish he'd just get on with playing football sometimes, but he is definitely stepping up into maybe the player we thought we got at the start of the season. It definitely feels a little bit like there is more to go from this defense compared to the attack. The attack is doing what we want it to do, and if we got the defence flowing the way that the attack is, then we'd have a really, really solid team. And there's definitely gaps in this defence you can get up.
So obviously you mentioned your fiance is a Forest fan. You watch a ton
Yeah.
of football for your job. What have you made of Forest this season under Nuno?
I've been really impressed with Forest under Nuno. Again, I watch a lot of you, nearly as much as I watch Chelsea, to be honest. And I mean, I just look at the performances and think this is really a season that Forest can go and push on. Now, the result at the weekend, and I don't think was the best performance we've seen from Forest against Fulham. And I think it was a slightly strange setup from Nuno. Of course, he went with a front two and went with no Alanga and no Hudson-Odoi. So my thinking on that is, like, he built a system, right, against Liverpool, for example, where you went with a system and you went with a game plan, and the way Liverpool absolutely go and do that, that is the type of game, and he absolutely did it to a T. But when you're playing at home against Fulham, that doesn't feel to me like that is the game that he should be trying to build a different system for and trying something new. That should be the type of game where you go with your best 11 and you go and play the football you want to play and you go and win that game rather than trying to counter what Fulham do. And Fulham went with their strongest lineup. Okay, I would argue, and maybe Forest fans will agree, that you were very unlucky to not get a penalty whilst they got one, looking at it. But it felt like that was a slight over management from it. And I love the Forest team when it's got Alanga, it's got Hudson-Odoi, it's got Gibbs-White, and it's got Chris Wood up front. I think you'll create enough chances. And I honestly think if you'd have gone with that again at the weekend, you may have got a different result. So I've been really impressed. You've definitely got the firepower there. Your defensive numbers have been fantastic again, as they were last year. But you conceded loads of goals from set pieces. That hasn't massively happened this year. So the defensive numbers look really good. So if you add that on top of the attack, I think you're in for a good season, as long as he needs to give those players the license to go and do what they can do.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear a neutral say that, because that's very much the sentiment that we've had since Saturday on here. So it's good to hear. So you mentioned a couple of Forest players there. Which ones would worry you if they start? Because I suspect we'll probably play a more defensive shape and not necessarily start with the wingers, but they will feature at some point. So which players would worry you from a Forest team?
Gibbs-White is one of the names that naturally would worry me going into the weekend. I do think your wingers scare me, and as a Chelsea fan, I will be happy to see Callum Hudson-Odoi back at Stamford Bridge. I think he is fantastic, and he would be fitting right in our system and saving us an awful lot of money, right, if we just decided to keep him. He probably scares me and his direct running more than a lot of the others. Like, he has the ability to he's very predictable, I think, but he's one of those players, he's predictable, but you still can't stop what he wants to do. So I look at him and think that is one that I really look at. And then, of course, it would be Gibbs-White, but then Alanga as well. So if I see the lineup and you're not going with the two of them, I will feel relieved, because I think those are the two players that can do damage against us.
Yeah, I mean, as we record this, I don't know if Morgan can play or not. He had a one-game ban for his sending off against Brighton, but he has an FA charge, which would carry possibly a two-game ban. We'll hear about this week, I think. So I'm hoping Morgan can play. I'll run through a team for you, Harry, which I think it'll be, and see what you think. So obviously, Sells in goal, the same back four. Aina Moreno, Milenkovic and Murillo, who've been excellent at centre backs, and then Yates and Ward-Prowse sitting, sort of covering for Danilo and Sangare, and then Dominguez and Anderson would play, and then instead of Taiwo would be Morgan playing in behind Chris Wood. So I think we'll start with that and then introduce the wingers. Do you think Chelsea could break that down then? Because Liverpool couldn't, but you think Chelsea could?
Well, I mean, I would argue that Liverpool did break it down. They didn't score off it, but they had chances that game could be very different. And, going away to Anfield, you have to get a little bit lucky, right? They hit the post once or twice in that game, and they had a few chances, which if they'd have scored those early on, that game could have been a little bit different. So I do think we'll be able to create chances against that team. I think there's enough direct attack that we've got that there will be chances in this game. I don't think it's impossible that it goes a similar way to what we saw against when you played Liverpool, but I would be hopeful enough that we can create enough early on that once the likes of Hudson-Odoi and Alanga come on, that hopefully the game is away from you, that even if they do the damage, that it won't be enough. I understand that that's the way that he'll want to set up. but I hope that there's enough in this Chelsea team that we could break it down. But I'm sure Liverpool would have said the same thing, right?
Yeah, I think when you go to one of the big six clubs, or almost any ground in the Premier League team now, Premier League, apart from, I mean, Southampton look awful, and a few teams look like they're going to struggle. But I think if you go away, you need a bit of luck, and I think we'll probably need that. But our defensive numbers are super strong,
Very
as you
good.
say.
Yeah.
If we do frustrate, is it a crowd that would get on the team's back or not?
I think it will only get on the team's back if we go behind. I think if it's level, still going into the later parts of the game, I don't think so at the moment. I think there is enough faith in this attack of what they've done over the past few weeks that it won't. But if we go behind, it will then very quickly be frustrated, I think. Trying to come from a losing position has never been our strong point. And yeah, if we're behind, there'll be frustration. But while we're level, I don't think there will be.
And does Maresca have a plan B then if the game's not going your way? Is it very rigid? If plan A doesn't work, we'll just do it better.
So I mean, the good thing about this squad being deep is there is an awful lot of firepower on the bench. Like we bring on Pedro Neto, we bring on João Felix, and we bring on Christopher Nkunku, and teams may be able to keep out this front four, but it's then an awful lot to try and keep out a fully fresh front four that looks completely different with a whole group of players, which is part of the benefit of why we're still scoring late in games this year, because teams do their best to keep us out. It tires them out, and then you bring on a backup front four or front three that looks exactly like that. So it's not a different style of play, but it's three completely different players who offer slightly different things. You know, and Nkunku has been fantastic for us. Can't get a look in the first team because of how well they're playing. João Felix and then Neto as well, being very direct. So it's more that he has the ability to just add equally as good players off the bench late on in games to try and create something a little bit different.
Yeah, I mean, Nkunku's an outstanding player. I think he'll have a big season, I'm sure. So yeah, if we go there and get a point, I'll be absolutely thrilled, to be honest, because I think it's going to be really, really tough. But I wouldn't rule us out, so I am looking forward to it, certainly. Just before we wrap things up, if you don't mind, do us a favour, hit like on the video. It does make a huge difference. I see Harry asking for 1,000 likes on every video because it does help with the algorithms. Do subscribe, become a channel member, give us a lovely review on iTunes and Spotify. Harry, obviously this is your full-time job, so where can people find more of you?
FPL Harry on Twitter and YouTube as well. And I've just started a non-FPL podcast called Know the Score as well, if people want some Premier League general chatter every week.
Excellent stuff. Do check that out and appreciate all the work that Harry does around FPL and everything else. Last thing from me, if you haven't already, do us a favour, vote for us in the Football Content Awards. We're shortlisted for Best Premier League Podcast and Best New Content Creator. So any support there would be lovely. Harry, you must be shortlisted in this as well.
Yeah, there is a Best in Fantasy Football Creator category as well. So if you don't know who to vote in that one while you're voting for the Forest Big Shed, you can the Forest Focus, you can add me in there as well.
Yeah, just vote for Harry anyway. Don't worry. Stick a vote in for Harry while you're there.
And vote for them while you're there as well.
Exactly. Right, Harry, wonderful to have you with us, and we hope to have you back again whenever the return fixture is. I've got absolutely no idea, but
I think it's normally right at the end of the season. It seems every year, like the final 4 weeks of the season, it's always then, I think. I'm not sure it is this year, but it was last year.
No, certainly. Last question, actually, I forgot to ask you this. I know you were obviously a really good side. We have been a slight thorn in your side. I know you beat us at the City ground. Yeah, we've had good results. Does it? And obviously, we've mentioned your fiance is a Forest fan. Any nerves about this game? Because if we do win, then you're going to have a really rough week domestically as well.
So I have season tickets at Chelsea, so I will be going with Holly to that game. So there will be tension in the stands as well, as I tell her to behave when Forest score, most likely, and not get up and start shouting Chris Wood's name when he rounds the keeper. No, I mean, I hope we win, but we go to this fixture every year, and it will be what it will be at full time.
Absolutely. Right. Obviously, games on Sunday. We'll be back Sunday. I think it's at 4:30 for the post-match show with Paul, Ruby, and Mark Southerns will join us for that, who Harry is well familiar with, I'm sure. So have a good weekend, everyone. And if we don't see you then, we shall see you soon.